If I told you that a single slice of bread packs up to 5 times more omega-3 than a fillet of wild-caught salmon, you'd probably think I was lying. But not only is this bread real, it was the exact daily staple eaten by Jesus of Nazareth and entire civilizations of the ancient world. They didn't rely on synthetic pharmacy supplements, miracle pills, or expensive fish oils to cure joint pain, protect their hearts, and fuel their brains. They relied on a humble, seed-based loaf that functioned just as much as a powerful medicine as it did a daily meal. So, what happened? How did the most nutritionally potent bread in human history completely vanish from our grocery store shelves? The dark truth is, the modern industrial food machine didn't just forget this ancient recipe. They actively buried it. They traded a nutrient-dense, natural healing food for the cheap, highly processed, inflammatory flour that is quietly destroying our health today. Right now, you are probably eating bread that actively strips your body of nutrients, completely unaware that the ultimate healthy alternative has been hiding in plain sight for over 2,000 years. Before this video ends, I am going to reveal the exact, historically accurate ingredients of this forgotten biblical loaf. I'm going to expose why the modern grain industry desperately wants you to keep eating their processed alternatives. And I'm going to show you step by step how to effortlessly bake this bread of the ancients right in your own kitchen. Walk down the bread aisle of any American grocery store today, and you are surrounded by a biological disaster disguised as food. Even the loaves dressed up in earthy brown packaging, boasting labels like 100% whole wheat or multigrain, are hiding a dark secret. Modern bread is fundamentally broken. Since the 1950s, the agricultural industry has genetically hybridized wheat to create high-yield, pest-resistant dwarf strains. But in the process of maximizing profit, they stripped out the vital nutrients. They refined the grain, stripping away the bran and the germ, leaving behind nothing but a starchy endosperm that hits your bloodstream faster than a candy bar. To make matters worse, they pump this industrial flour full of chemical preservatives. Dough conditioners like azodicarbonamide, the exact same chemical used to manufacture yoga mats, and synthetic fortifiers just to keep it sitting on a shelf for weeks without molding. When you eat this, you aren't nourishing your cells. You are triggering a massive inflammatory response. Your joints ache, your brain fogs, your gut lining degrades, and your risk for metabolic disease skyrockets. We are eating empty calories that actively steal vitamins and minerals from our bodies just to process them. You're literally paying the food industry to slowly make you sick. Now, rewind the clock 2,000 years to the dusty, sun-baked hills of ancient Judea. Think about the daily life of a first-century carpenter, fisherman, or shepherd. These were people enduring grueling physical labor from dawn until dusk in a harsh, unforgiving climate. They didn't have access to modern healthcare, anti-inflammatory drugs, or a pharmacy on every corner. Their survival depended entirely on what they put into their mouths and their primary source of fuel, bread. Bread was so foundational to human existence that the word itself became synonymous with life. When Jesus of Nazareth said, "I am the bread of life," or taught his followers to pray, "Give us this day our daily bread," he wasn't talking about a fluffy, pre-sliced, plastic-wrapped loaf of empty carbohydrates. He was referencing a deeply complex, incredibly dense superfood. First-century bread was an absolute nutritional powerhouse. It was a heavy, rich, seed-packed matrix that didn't just sustain life, it actively repaired the cellular damage of the body. Ancient populations consumed massive amounts of this daily bread, yet historical and archaeological records show almost zero evidence of the chronic metabolic diseases, massive dental decay, or widespread joint inflammation that plague us today. They thrived. The disconnect is staggering. How could a food that served as the very foundation of human health for millennia suddenly become public health enemy number one? The answer lies in what was actually inside that ancient dough. The Israelites weren't using the hybridized inflammatory dwarf wheat we consume. They were utilizing a master blend of ancient, uncorrupted grains and, most importantly, a specific, highly prized seed that acted as a medicinal binder. A seed so revered for its healing properties that ancient kings actually passed laws requiring their subjects to consume it. This ingredient was the ultimate delivery system for alpha-linolenic acid, plant-based protein, and gut-healing lignans. For decades, modern doctors have been telling us that to protect our aging brains and lubricate our creaky joints, we must swallow fistfuls of expensive fish oil capsules. We've been programmed to believe that human beings naturally lack omega-3 fatty acids unless we eat massive amounts of deep water fish or buy synthetic supplements. But here is the massive lie the modern health industry doesn't want you to realize. You don't have a fish deficiency, you have a bread deficiency. The people of the ancient world were getting their daily massive doses of joint-healing, brain-boosting omega-3s not from the sea, but straight from the oven. The secret ingredient they used wasn't some rare, mystical herb lost to time. It's sitting in your local grocery store right now. Flaxseed. But the people of ancient Israel didn't just sprinkle a few seeds on top of a loaf for an aesthetic crunch like a trendy modern bagel. They integrated massive quantities of it directly into the structural matrix of the dough. In the ancient world, flax wasn't a garnish, it was the main event. Why? Because ancient bakers instinctively understood a biological cheat code that modern science is only just now rediscovering. Flaxseed is the most concentrated source of plant-based omega-3 alpha-linolenic acid on the planet. Just 2 tablespoons contain over 3,000 milligrams of it. That completely obliterates the omega-3 profile of wild-caught salmon. But here is the catch. You can't just eat raw flax seeds and expect a miracle. If you swallow them whole, they pass right through your digestive tract completely intact. You get zero nutritional value. The ancients knew this. They didn't have blenders or high-speed food processors. Instead, they relied on heavy stone mills. They crushed the flax seeds right alongside ancient grains like emmer, einkorn, and spelt. This violent stone milling process cracked open the hard outer shell of the seed, exposing the incredibly delicate omega-3 oils inside. But that created a massive new problem. The second those freshly milled oils hit the oxygen in the air, they start to go rancid. So how did a desert society without refrigeration keep their omega-rich bread from turning toxic? They used the single most powerful food preservation technique in human history. They fermented it. In the Bible, it's called leaven. Today, we call it sourdough. But ancient sourdough wasn't the trendy, sour-tasting white bread you buy at an artisan bakery for $10. It was a rugged, wild yeast culture. When they mixed that crushed flaxseed and ancient wheat with water and wild yeast, a chemical magic trick occurred. The fermentation process actually protected the fragile omega-3s from oxidizing during the bake. The wild bacteria pre-digested the grains, neutralizing the anti-nutrients and phytic acid that usually block your body from absorbing minerals. They didn't just bake a loaf of bread, they engineered a highly bioavailable anti-inflammatory delivery system. When you eat flaxseed properly milled and fermented this way, your body gets flooded with something fish oil capsules don't even have. Lignans. Lignans are massive antioxidant powerhouses. They scavenge free radicals, balance your hormones, and literally halt cellular aging. Flaxseed contains up to 800 times more lignans than any other plant food on Earth. This is exactly why ancient manual laborers could carry heavy timber, haul massive fishing nets, and walk dozens of miles in the desert sun without their knees giving out. Their daily bread was actively lubricating their joints and fighting systemic inflammation with every single bite. So, if this bread is practically a cure-all, why did the modern food industry violently rip it out of our diets? The answer boils down to 2 words: shelf life Omega-3 oils are volatile. Bread packed with freshly milled flaxseed and ancient grains goes bad in a matter of days if it isn't eaten. In the 1900s, when food corporations started mass-producing bread in factories, they realized they couldn't ship highly nutritious, oil-rich loaves across the country. The bread would spoil before it even reached the supermarket shelves. Their solution was ruthless. They stripped out the omega-rich seeds. They stripped out the nutrient-dense germ. They killed the wild fermentation process entirely, replacing it with commercial baker's yeast that inflates dough in an hour instead of a day. They traded your health for their profit margins. They convinced Americans that fluffy, stark white bread was a symbol of purity and progress. In reality, it was dead food. And over the decades, as our bread got softer and whiter, where our waistlines got wider, our joints got stiffer, and our brains got foggier. You might be thinking you can outsmart the system. Just head to the health food aisle and grab a loaf of flax bread, right? Wrong. Flip over the bag of almost any commercial flax bread today and look at the ingredient list. The first ingredient is still heavily processed, inflammatory wheat flour. They throw in a handful of whole uncrushed flax seeds just so they can legally print the word flax on the front label. And remember what we just learned about whole flax seeds? Your body can't even digest them. It's a complete marketing scam. You are paying a premium for a health benefit you aren't actually getting. The only way to reclaim the staggering health benefits of this ancient biblical staple is to take back control. You have to bypass the industrial food machine completely. You have to bake it yourself. And before you panic and think you don't have the time, the skill, or the expensive equipment to bake ancient bread from scratch, let me stop you. What if I told you that recreating the exact nutrient-dense loaf eaten by Jesus takes less than 10 minutes of actual hands-on work? You don't need a culinary degree, a massive stand mixer, or hours of exhausting kneading. The modern food industry desperately wants you to believe that baking is a tedious, complex science that requires their commercial powders and synthetic yeast. It is a lie. The ancients didn't have high-tech kitchens. What they had was time, reverence, and the raw, uncorrupted elements of the earth. Here is the exact blueprint to resurrect the bread of the ancients in your modern kitchen. First, establish your foundation. Drop the bleached, enriched, all-purpose flour that is currently destroying your gut. You need an ancient grain, einkorn, spelt, or Khorasan wheat. These are the original uncorrupted ancestors of modern wheat, featuring a fragile gluten structure that your body can actually digest, completely untouched by modern agricultural hybridization. Next, the star of the show. You need golden or brown flaxseed. But remember the biological catch. You cannot buy the pre-ground bags sitting in the baking aisle. Those fragile omega-3 oils have already oxidized, turned rancid, and lost their healing power under the fluorescent supermarket lights. You must buy whole, intact flax seeds and grind them yourself in a cheap coffee grinder right before you mix your dough. You want roughly a quarter cup of freshly blasted flaxseed for every loaf. This single step is the secret to unlocking a nutritional profile that violently dwarfs the most expensive wild-caught salmon money can buy. Now add your catalyst, the leaven, the wild sourdough starter. This is your living, breathing matrix of wild yeast and beneficial bacteria. Pour in your pure water a generous pinch of coarse sea salt and mix it all together with your bare hands. That's it. That is your 10 minutes of actual labor. It will look like a shaggy, wet, unimpressive mass in your bowl. Let it be. Cover it with a damp cloth and simply walk away. Leave it on your counter overnight. As you sleep, ancient biological alchemy takes over. The wild yeast begins pre-digesting the complex carbohydrates. It completely neutralizes the phytic acid in the grains, the anti-nutrient that normally blocks your body from absorbing vital minerals. Most importantly, this wild fermentation process wraps those delicate, newly exposed omega-3 fatty acids in a protective acidic embrace, shielding them from the destructive oxygen in the air. By the time the sun comes up, that heavy mass will have transformed into a living, fermented dough entirely bio-optimized for human digestion. Shape it into a rustic loaf, drop it into a screaming hot cast-iron Dutch oven to trap the steam, perfectly mimicking the ancient stone ovens of 1st century Judea, and bake it. When you finally pull the lid off, you won't see a pale, lifeless, factory-made square wrapped in plastic. You will see a dark, deeply caramelized, heavily crusted masterpiece. When you slice into it, the aroma isn't just the smell of baking bread. It is the scent of human history. It is earthy, intensely nutty, and impossibly rich. Smear a thick, warm slice with raw butter or dip it in cold-pressed olive oil, exactly as the ancient Israelites did. With that single bite, you are doing so much more than just eating a meal. You are staging a ruthless rebellion against a trillion-dollar food machine that profits off your sickness. You are instantly flooding your bloodstream with pure, unoxidized alpha-linolenic acid, actively crushing systemic inflammation, lubricating your stiff joints, and feeding your brain the exact raw materials it desperately needs to thrive. You are consuming the highest concentration of plant-based lignans on Earth, scavenging free radicals and healing your degraded gut lining with every single chew. You are finally experiencing bread not as a guilty pleasure or a vessel for empty carbohydrates, but as a dense, powerful preventative medicine. This is the superfood that built empires. This is the daily sustenance that fueled the most resilient figures in human history. By taking just 10 minutes out of your day to combine water, ancient grain, freshly ground seed, and wild yeast, you are reclaiming a lost biological birthright. You are reaching back across 2 millennia, past the factories, past the chemical preservatives, and past the modern lies, to break the exact same bread that sustained the ancients. But this ancient bread is just the beginning of your rebellion. The modern food machine hasn't just stripped the life out of our wheat. They have systematically erased thousands of years of ancestral biological wisdom, replacing it with profitable inflammatory chemicals that keep you sick, tired, and dependent. Reclaiming your daily bread is the critical first strike, but to fully rebuild your health, you must uncover the rest of the forgotten medicinal foods that forged human resilience. There are other raw, uncorrupted elements of the earth, powerful catalysts for longevity, gut repair, and radical vitality that have been purposefully buried by modern agriculture. Every single week, we are entirely bypassing the grocery store aisles and ripping the veil off these modern lies. We are dissecting the ancient biological alchemy and handing you the exact, step-by-step blueprints to resurrect the lost superfoods of our ancestors right in your own kitchen. You possess the power to completely optimize your digestion, crush systemic inflammation, and take absolute control of your own biology, but you need the right ammunition. Do not let a trillion-dollar industry dictate your health for one more day. If you are ready to arm yourself with the uncorrupted truth and continue reclaiming your biological birthright, hit the subscribe button right now. Join this ruthless rebellion. Secure your access to our next ancient food blueprint, and let's rebuild the resilient, thriving body you were always meant to possess.